All right. So it is a beautiful Monday at 6:48 a.m. I was up super early. And let's cycle back to Friday because got to catch you up from Friday. So Friday, I was super bloated, like super bloated. And I still went out to dinner with my husband because we got sushi. But I was super bloated. I didn't even enjoy the sushi. It was just like, ugh. And it was aggressive this weekend. The climate change, the storms, the frequencies, wow, yes, aggressive. I released diarrhea a little bit. I'm sure my husband did too. And okay. And I said, remember, if you get diarrhea, just keep eating. Make sure you have salt and water and sugar and carbs and meat, milk and cheese and eggs and everything. So that way you replace whatever was lost. So, but then on Saturday, I felt amped up. I woke up in the morning and wow, I was like, I got to do this, and this. My husband's like, let me just lay here. And so I went shopping, got food, and then I had poop. Like, oh my gosh. And so I noticed a difference because the frequencies were such that I went from being so bloated, being so fertile because of my exposure to him even midweek, and I felt it. And then it came to a head on a Friday, and I still went out and hung out for about an hour. And I had an okay night on Friday night, and then it was the amped upness. Even though, I was bloated, I still was actually sleeping okay. I blew my nose a few times. And then it was Saturday, I was amped up, and I just was like, wow, a complete opposite. And I went shopping, and I made a bunch of food, and then I had to poop like a lot. And so then yesterday was just like, I made that breakfast and all that. You saw what I did, and it was just, so this morning, I woke up so early, like super early. And I saw there's a video of Marilyn Monroe and another biography that was done recently, and it was a short biography. It wasn't like super long. And then there was a biography about Adam and Eve. And those two came around the same time because most of my videos are about Hollywood icons and their backgrounds, as well as then biblical stories, just so I could hear all different perspectives. But those two juxtaposition each other then gave me the clue. When you think about what my next book is going through so many different titles. I thought it was like the dawn of mankind, but that's just so unoriginal. And out of Africa, back to Africa, no. When you think about even in Africa, okay, we know it's the cradle of mankind, and then all the 6 different civilizations are the cradle of civilizations. But that's already assumed, right? But it's the Bible, the Old Testament, is what's so prevalent even in Africa. Africans know they are the cradle of mankind. But when you think about the stories that shape our life, and that's what I'm really referring to, that the Bible is the main book that everyone has their perspective on, but those are the stories, the Genesis, are the allegory that shapes every single society in some way or another. And everyone, I guess, has their spin-off and their perspective on it and their interpretation of it. But I was raised in the Jewish religion, and even though I was raised Jewish, it doesn't mean that I take any kind of side and say I will strictly only defend. Now, I did take that side for a minute, but then I also know that the Rosicrucians are not just Jewish. So then I even have to watch myself, even when I was raised Jewish and even told out there, oh yeah, the Jews are the chosen people. What does that even mean, really, when you think about it? Chosen for what? And so then it's the compilation of all the knowledge and the evolution of our world is what runs our society and what should run our society. We should not be just putting all our eggs in this basket, this basket, this basket. We take from all the best. We take the best from all the religions and schools of thought and develop than the current and the future, and also analyze the past. And so I knew that love was, I knew love was deadly. It took me a minute to figure out fertility, but fertility is also deadly. And so when I was watching Marilyn Monroe, and I even found some similarities, of course. I mean, she's bounced from family to family. Of course, I was in different group homes and hanging out with different people in their families and in institutions too. And so was she. She had a thirst for knowledge. She was painted as some dumb blonde. Yes, very talented. And she chased after knowledge and got training and was married to several people and was a sex bomb. For all intents and purposes, back in the 1950s, she was a sex bomb. And so watch that biography of her on I just posted recently, because it's a short one, not so short. It was short enough that it doesn't bore you. But watch that one, and then watch Adam and Eve. And then I figured out, oh shit, my book title now, okay, forget Lilith. And because that's just another face of Eve when you think about it. But really, right now, what the whole J world represents, I finally figured that out once I watched the whole Adam. I just got finished watching that video of the Adam and Eve, and it was a current video. I'm like, it is Eve's rebellion. The whole J world is rebelling against the patriarchal society, yes, the slavery of women, and the fertility, and the forcing of having babies and marriage and all that, and also the sexual orientation. Because not just the right-wing traditional of developing babies, but also painting women as having to be somebody's sexual plaything in LGBTQ as well as in a straight relationship. And so it's setting women free from that fertility, because the story went for the last 6,000 years is that we nation build. It's all about having families and children, or getting married and having some kind of sexuality. But then, with all these great resets that people are rebelling against, but they're necessary because mankind has fell victim to addictions. Mankind fall victim to temptation, blaming. Mankind has fallen victim to so many things that are full of pleasure and paradise, that they die in pleasure and paradise. And from that pleasure and paradise comes fertility. Not only comes children, but also disease, and also monsters. Like monsters. And that's what the Vatican represents, is when you get lost in so much pleasure and paradise, you become despotic and develop monsters. And so, yeah, the Vatican isn't like, you think about it, it's not like it's satanic when you think about it. They're just reminding you that when mankind becomes way out of control in their fertility, and then you have the microbial merging of animals and humans, and then that was the whole fantasia of the Greek mythology, the half man, half horse, and the half man, half dog, and I would not doubt that happened many years back, and of course different monsters. And we had giants, and you can go and look at that. But that's something that's being revealed slowly through the conspiracy world and the whole Tartaria stuff. But yeah, the giants. Yeah, that's right, the whole book of Enoch and the giants. The sons of God found the daughters of men, and then all that. So they took them all as wives and all that. But yeah, the whole Adam and Eve, that book, that Genesis, and I'm sure Enoch is somewhere in there, then developed the monsters and the slavery of women and the slavery of men too. And so I was taking some notes, I was watching that video, and it just clicked, even just watching a few minutes of that Adam and Eve and the story of the family and how deadly the family can be. Oh, absolutely, with Cain and Abel. With Cain jealous of Abel, jealousy among sisters, jealousy among brothers, where they even do destroy each other. And you look at the families out there, some get along great, and some are so deadly to each other. They hate each other with a passion. Okay? I've seen it in all different families. And some in families, they were purposely developed to be against each other for whatever reason. You see, my family was a contrived version of what happens out there. My family was not, like, when you think about the outcome, it was not organic. There was specific intentions. When I figured out their specific intentions, I was like, oh my God. Because I was thinking like, oh, maybe just, my poor mother, she had issues when I'm like, no, there was specific intentions. And so that's when we're like, oh, that's how I figured this stuff out. Because we see what happens organically when A and B and C and D go do whatever they do. And then if you want to do experiments to see if that is actually the case, then it would be a consistent outcome. Then you develop specific situations, develop certain outcomes. Okay? And so, yeah, it's not surprising that I'm not close to anybody in my family. And that's okay. Because remember, family is deadly to each other. And so you really must have that separation. If not, everyone goes over the cliff together. Okay? Because not only the traditions, but also the microbial fornication, developing disease and cancer and things of the like. And since people don't open up their immune system, they're getting everything treated, it just adds more, it compounds more fertility until all out annihilation. So when I was doing the notes, watching Adam and Eve, I was like, forbidden fruit equals addiction, developing perceptions of what is good and what is evil. So then I'm looking at where I'm making that connection with all the different symbols in the story. Well, forbidden fruit. Well, yeah. When you're doing pot and alcohol and drugs and sex and religion and politics and the scientific dogmas, then you're developing perceptions of what is good and what is evil. And so the medical holistic system has developed the perception that pain is evil and being cured is good. And of course, that ends up always in the morgue. Okay? And that is a built-in human regulator, because humans are really supposed to be immortal, but immortalized in what state of existence? Now, could a stupid person be able to live indefinitely? Probably not, because a stupid person, when you think about it, back then would be someone like a Neanderthal back then, who would be one of those that would chase women and sex and drugs and pleasure. And so it takes someone who has control over their own hormones, that's not trying to procreate, because even the cavemen were procreating all over the place until, so you can go figure out how that story began from the cavemen to then Adam and Eve. But it would take an advanced person to finally realize that that they would have to be careful of who they surround themselves with, be careful of all the addictions and the temptations, and feed their brain a lot more than just pleasure and paradise all the time and resistance and all that. And so immortality would not be for anyone that is about their body. It's about spirituality. Spirituality is death. How do you justify death? Immortality is for someone who's able to separate themselves from the family, separate themselves from society. When you think about it, develop their own cocoon of existence, still connected, but not so closely connected to mankind that mankind out there is enveloping them. And even if you are partnered up with someone who may think the opposite, still developing boundaries within a relationship so you survive your spouse who's still out there gallivanting. And that's the thing with the J world, is if you're married to someone, how will you develop the boundaries so you can protect yourself even though the other person may think completely opposite of you? And that would require respect. It would require even you as the person developing an argument that the other person can understand. Even if they don't understand, they respect it and they adhere to it. They don't just take what they want. And some marriages out there, men and women, just take what they want because they think they're entitled to. Okay, so immortality is really left to someone who's able to understand these concepts, that immortality is not a group mentality. It is not groupthink. It is not resistance. It is not politics. It's not religion. And it's not the scientific dogmas. Immortality is for an advanced thinking person. And you should be able to speak about it on some level without repeating platitudes all the time. There's definitely has to be an intellectual evolution That does come in time, but it requires reading. It requires practicing. It requires writing. It requires making mistakes. It requires so much more than what people are able to give, given all of the distractions and the survival. Okay? And so, yeah. So serpent equals scapegoat, something to blame. Did the snake actually tempt? I mean, that would mean the snake was talking and say, hey, here, Eve, give Adam this apple so he can then figure out he's naked and all this other shit. I mean, some of it's like figurative versus literal. And I had to even, I mean, why did I think this before? Because it took me hearing one of the professors on that video say, oh yeah, the serpent, the classic scapegoat, the classic thing for someone to blame. Now look at your activist group. They're blaming Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Jilly Juice, blaming, air, food, water, and somebody else. And so they're enacting that point in the story where God's going to cast them out of the Garden of Eden, right? And so when women do not release the demons, they tempt, they hunt, they become fertile, and they blame and teach their children this as their children are fertile as well. Okay? And of course, all the alchemy ensures this because the alchemy develops fertility in supplements, detoxes, pharmaceuticals, all the therapies, even oncology develops fertility. Because the body has to then try to figure out how to save itself from being, it develops cells to try to patch up the wound. So that also is fertility, but you're now developing cells that are damaged from the operations and the invasive therapies. And so Adam and Eve's knowledge of nudity as shameful is like telling someone food is poison. How many women have told their children and their audience on Facebook that food is poison? They only give their kids organic. That's it. I even see it on my Facebook like, oh, here's my kids, and I'm giving them all organic stuff. So these kids are not only starving, but they're malnourished. And it's a question if they're going to survive this new environment, or this environment's coming in. It's already here. It's just ramping up. When these kids are so malnourished, it's like, and they're told that food is poison, eat only organic. It was like the serpent told them, here, eat this apple. And now you'll have the knowledge of good and evil. And then that's the Tower of Babel. That's the perception based upon how someone wants to characterize something based upon what their intention is for you. The serpent was like authority, but you could think that somebody on Facebook who has a homeopathic license is the authority because they have a license and they're telling you food is poison. And then when you feel pain around that food, it's like a confirmation to you. Oh, yes, here's the confirmation. Here's the evidence. I ate this food and I broke out in hives. And so, yeah, you're right. Food is poison. This food is poison. And that's the serpent. So now you're seeing everybody on Facebook who says food is poison and here, take this, take that. It is a serpent tempting people into developing a perception around food, thus causing starvation. Oh, this is pretty crazy, man. God said, how do you know nudity is shameful? Adam blamed Eve. In essence, she told Adam nudity is shameful. So it took Adam listening to Eve. No different than people on Facebook listening to strangers. Oh, food is poison. Don't eat this. Right? And see, mothers tell their children how to self-destruct. Adam and Eve are the story of mankind who grew up in a perfect world and then threw it all away due to temptation. Okay, so Adam was lonely. All right, we understand that humans need interaction, but what kind of interaction and with whom? See, I like being on my own. It's nice my husband comes home, but obviously, when you have someone on top of you all the time, it sucks. And so we developed a space even when we're in the household. Sometimes he's downstairs looking at his phone, watching stuff, and sometimes I'm upstairs watching TV, doing my own thing. So even when we're together on the weekend, we have space apart. And then we come together with eating or going out there to doing whatever we're doing. He went to go get something, and I went on with him on a car ride to go somewhere. And then, when we come home, sometimes I'll go upstairs and watch whatever, and he's downstairs doing his thing and whatever, doing the fishing or doing stuff with his boat. And, so even though humans need people, to what extent do you need people? How many people do you need in your life? And on top of you, see, I can be relatively independent, even with a husband who understands space. And even he doesn't even sleep on the bed all the time because his back, he hates the bed, and it's not the bed's fault, it's just that his back is whatever. But okay, but he's more comfortable on the couch. But I am independent, when you think about it, emotionally independent and even physically independent on some level, with an infrastructure of people who are in various states of existence. Because my government ensured we had so many people who would take care of the infrastructure, and given the freedom to develop another thought process, another lifestyle that isn't going to harm anyone else and even themselves. So you're given all these opportunities to develop and think of different ways to live that would be beneficial for you, maybe not for everybody else, but at least for you, and then a chance to represent. Okay? And so Earth became populated through suffering to feed themselves and survive as humans continue to attempt to find paradise. And that's the drugs, the alcohol, all the friends and family. To them, that's paradise to people. But remember, it was just Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and the animals. Okay? And so that's what that guy was saying in that movie or in that YouTube video, was that the animals weren't enough for Adam, because then the animals would think that Adam was God. And so if Adam had Eve, and the whole thing with the rib, I don't know about that, how much that's true, but whatever. But having two people maintain and be a steward of animals was better than one. Okay? Because God wanted to be the almighty thing. And so he then developed Adam and Eve together for then the animals. And so anyways, and so Earth became populated through suffering to feed themselves and survive as humans continue to attempt to find paradise. And so, yeah, I knew I was thinking something else with the whole thing with animals. Yeah. All right, and so paradise in heaven was via Christianity. And so right now humans are looking for paradise in their friends and family. That's right, because it was paradise in the Garden of Eden with just Adam and Eve and the animals. But then when you start bringing in family and friends and strangers and groups and association, it's not paradise anymore. Now it's fertility. Now everyone's at war with each other, even though they're not actively hand-to-hand combat, but their microbes are at war with each other, which is why you get cancer in the population of diversity, which is why you see now in a higher frequency environment, cancer, turbo cancers are even more accelerated and died suddenly in group situations. That's what I'm saying, in this environment, for those who understand where I'm coming from and realize and understand, fertility is deadly. And it's not as deadly in a slower frequency, but as the climate changes, fertility is deadly in group situations. And so that's why Earth became so populated through suffering to feed themselves and survive as humans continue to attempt to find paradise. But they're finding it in all the wrong places. It's causing their death. But you can't tell them that if they expect to die anyway, so you let them have their fun. Right? So paradise is heaven via Christianity. As far as Cain and Abel, when men say they are their brother's keeper, essentially resisting the story of Genesis, when Cain said he was not his brother's keeper, men destroy each other via traditions and groupthink when they do the opposite and become everyone's keeper, zookeeper, even their wife's keeper, ensuring the painful suffering of death via microbial fertility and even having a bunch of children. So I've heard somebody in the Hebrews world, okay, that said that he is his brother's keeper. And I know he's a Hebrew because he's been on my Facebook. I'm not going to say his name. But then I'm like, I remember that was a couple days ago. And I just, that was in the back of my mind as a file. And then when I listened to that video today, I'm like, holy shit. Cain was saying that he was not, when God was looking for Abel, because Cain destroyed Abel. Cain was like, I'm not my brother's keeper. And so to say that then you are your brother's keeper, doing the complete opposite of what Genesis is, not ensuring that you're going to ensure longevity within you and with your brother. It's just another false paradise when you think about it. But again, can you say to people who have been raised in having to be around so many people in a religion, extremism, okay? And so then what happens is then everyone becomes each other's keeper, and they're around each other all the time causing microbial fertility. And then in this environment, it's die suddenly. Turbo cancers. Oh, it's strategic what's going on. But then when humans left the Garden of Eden and they procreated and they were cursed, like the women were cursed with labor pains and painful pregnancies and crazy children and all of that. Yeah. That's then eventually when that society or that group became so out of control at the end of the genetic line, then it was death. But see, what you're seeing now with 8 billion people and in the future 11 to 12 billion, which is mostly going to be Africa, that are going to be bearing Bearing and Burying the children. You're seeing them now. You see, just go look at some of these Africa websites. I love Africa. I love Africa weddings. And of course the influencers, the rich. Oh yeah. They're going through their own Genesis, their own Garden of Eden. Well, they will be in the Garden of Eden, and then as soon as they lose their virginity, which happens now, but now they're going to be rewarded for losing their virginity. They will have so much family, so much bubbles, access to university, access to elite groups, access to clubs and dinners and fine dining and travel. I'm telling you, the system is pulling out all the stops. They will reward them with temptation, with everything. And that's what you're watching now with people who have money. But in this environment, they're traveling everywhere, which is great, fine. Travel everywhere, hang out with so many people, the drugs, alcohol, and sex, and baubles, and all of that fertility then turns into either died suddenly or turbo cancers, or diagnosable conditions where you have to have things cut out of you. And that would include a C-section as well. And so death was always a regulator to mankind lost in his addictions and fertility. Losing one's virginity is the long slide to mortality. Lilith. Now, actually, that was from, I mixed the Epic of Gilgamesh because that's what they mentioned at the end of that one film, the one with Adam and Eve. They mentioned the Epic of Gilgamesh, and that was a Mesopotamian story around Sumer. And Lilith was a Sumerian demon, and the guy was saying that Gilgamesh was essentially very innocent, running around naked until he had intercourse. And then losing one's virginity is a long slide to mortality. Yeah. I know exactly how I was raised and why I was raised. I know exactly the programming. I know even the physical programming around it. And I won't go into great detail because nothing was illegal per se, but I know exactly how they developed these women to be so fucking sexual. Like so fucking sexual and gorgeous. And it's through the hormones. And it wasn't through drugs. I know exactly what it was. I'm not going to say what it is, but I'll say that when you have different cancers in different areas and people die from these cancers, that's where the trauma-based programming started out. Okay? So if you have cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, or other types of cancers inside, or anal cancer, that's from all the kinetic energy from the trauma-based programming through sexuality. That's what these women are dying from childbirth, having so many babies, breast cancer, and cervical ovarian cancer. All the sexual reproductive cancers come from the act of losing virginity and then constant trauma to those body parts. And then, of course, children who were bred to be a certain way had certain traumas done, but not like what you think. But I know exactly. So your body will tell you what exactly you went through. Okay? And it doesn't mean that it was illegal. It just means that it was just part of science. But that's how they program these hot chicks out there. But some girls have sex at a young age, so it programs them to be hot at a young age. And of course, then the societal constructs, the movies, the parents ensuring that they don't eat so much, taking away food, saying food is poison, curing them with all the different remedies. And so that's why you see so many hot chicks out there who have addictions, who also have boyfriends and will eventually become pregnant or try to become pregnant or have so many babies that they don't survive. Because you're seeing that now. So I knew exactly what I was programmed for. Believe me, I know. And so then, of course, being raised in the Jewish religion and understanding then the Old Testament and even some of the namesakes like Jillith, Lilith. Okay. And then me studying science and allegory and religion. And then the conspiracy world on top of that. And then all the activism. It's a perfect fucking storm. And the legal system. And chemistry, biochemistry, physics. You don't want to leave any stone unturned when you're trying to understand yourself and society so you don't end up like your friends going over the fucking cliff because they're so one-sided and biased, looking for paradise and friends and family when that's really where hell is because of the fertility. You got to understand all of it so you can put it all together. And then when you finally do put it all together for yourself, be able to articulate it in your words and with your own examples in your own family and friends and everything else. And then you're like, holy shit, here you go. This is my perspective on this same thing. Again, humans have always had the capacity to be immortalized, but in what state of existence? Humans had to achieve great awareness and advanced thought processes to be responsible in their immortality or indefinite life if all the conditions are favorable, i.e. no nuclear blast right next to them, okay? Immortality is for the advanced humans who finally realize all of his own foibles and wrongdoings, developing layered boundaries to ensure his own survival. Immortality is not found in groupthink or sitting with your family. Immortality is an individual venture within a collective of people in various states of existence with proper boundaries. So again, yeah, you'll need company of humans, but you need them right on top of you. And if they are on top of you, will they give you your space? See, living in a small place, like my husband and I were living in a truck together when we were first starting the trucking industry. Oh, we were at each other's throats. We were just married too at the time. And then he went on the road with a student and I stayed at home. And then eventually we lived different places and even small apartments, but still had this space. And now we have this house and I figured out how to take back my sexuality and say, okay, once a week, I'm not having to scream me to death. And then finally, we both get the space. He has the space to do whatever in his world. I have space to do what to advance myself and to bring back my substance so it's not being taken from somebody else. That's how you're able to stay alive and even potentially develop immortality, even when you're married, assuming that person respects you. If the person doesn't respect you, they say, yeah, screw you. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm your husband or I'm your wife. I should be able to take whatever I want. And that's how some marriages are. Women think they're entitled, men think they're entitled, and the women or men don't have any choice because they're married, right? They're supposed to give it up whenever their person wants it. That's how the system got to you, through consent. Everything, when you think about the death culture, it can't be like 1945. It has to be through your consent, through your perception of the information, and you saying yes. And signing on the dotted line. And even when you're married, you're saying, yes, I will love, honor, and obey, whatever the hell that means, okay, to the other person. And so when you get with somebody who is really taking that literally and they want you to obey on so many levels, well, you signed on the dotted line that you would do this. But here's the thing, evolution is supposed to come into play. But though people think that marriages stay cured, you're supposed to be with the same person you married. No. That's why there's 50% divorce rate, because people think that they want the woman they married 15 years ago. No, people change. And if you can't change with them because you're stuck in this perception that everything should be cured and staying the same, and that's in a lot of these Christian religions. So these women are not allowed to change. They're supposed to be bearing so many babies, serve the husband, serve the family, sacrifice herself, and it's with her consent. And so then she has no room to say anything because she signed on the dotted line. And we don't have any room to say anything to that marriage and that religion and that union because they both agreed to it. So even though I see women who are in those situations or have been in those situations, I can't go and be like, let me save you from that, because it's not for me to say. But some women deserve to have the choice that they don't have to go into that institution of slavery. Some women deserve, but some women say, hey, fuck it. I have nothing else going for me. The only thing going for me is to be someone's sex thing and to bear a bunch of babies and then play that role and be the servant to that family, that husband, those children until the day I die. Okay, good for you. Then that was something you chose. And so when you are dying and when you do have disease and cancer and whatever, I don't expect you to be blaming the therapy system. I don't expect you to be blaming the air, food, and fucking water, because you're the one that got into fertility, if you understood what that is, and developed the deficiencies in your children, in you. And there should be no one you should be blaming. You should be accepting every single disease that comes into your world. You should be expecting and accepting every single uncomfortable, type of mortality type of situation, because you've accepted that. You signed on the dotted line. But you see people sign on the dotted line. They accept these conditions in marriages and the hospital, medical, and holistic system, and yet they're blaming somebody else. Well, let me educate you and say that fertility is deadly. It's what's caused all your diseases and cancers and died suddenly. And you accepted it through the remedy system, through the institution of marriage when you have 5, 6, 7, 10 children. But you were never told this, but now you're being told this. But it's not through any doctors out there or any kind of authority, because remember, the system has to play both sides. They can't favor one side or the other. They give you both sides, but yet the institutions of the medical, holistic, and marriage institutions are death institutions. They're not going to say, well, you shouldn't get married, because even religion is wrapped up in that. And of course, there has to be a separation between church and state. And so then you have to understand that fertility is thermodynamics. Fertility is entropy. Fertility is decay. Fertility is deadly. Fertility is built into relationships and marriages. Why did I go into it? First, into marriage, lust, and a business relationship. Because I knew what I had to offer. I knew what my husband had to offer. We merged those two worlds together. Yes, there was lust in there. And then finally it evolved. And it had to. Despite some people's resistance of evolution within my own marriage. And so I had to fight for this type of survival. Okay? And so immortality is an individual venture within a collective of people in various states of existence with proper boundaries. And if women don't have proper boundaries, she'll be used and abused. And then she'll blame somebody. Of course, just look at all the different activists. Yeah. Genesis gave you insight on how deadly the family is. Cain and Abel. I spelled Abel wrong, that's okay. Lilith, Mary Magdalene. They all told you through allegory. The suffering was in the family. Suffering comes from family. If you can survive your family and live and not die because of your family, but what do people do? They sacrifice themselves as they are nailed to the cross. If you don't have to die for your family and you survive your family, you found paradise. You found freedom. Is my life paradise? Abso-fucking-lutely. I can sleep when I want. I can eat when I want. I could read what I want. I could write what I want on some level. And I mean, I'm not, obviously, everything's within certain limitations. But I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I'm not trying to save anyone. I can develop what I want within limitations. I'm not trying to develop another bomb out there or anything. I know exactly the world I live in. I don't go and hang out with things that I know are going to destroy me. I have no addictions. Remember, I quit smoking. I don't drink. I don't do any kind of pot. None of that. I drink a little bit of coffee. And I get so excited waking up, discovering these things. I woke up, again, this 3:30 this morning. Released a little demon, nothing major. And that was it. And I was listening to those videos. And I'm like, I can't wait to listen to the rest of this video. And so I listened to the rest of that Marilyn Monroe video after I took a shower, and I was making my coffee and doing whatever. And then I sat down here and listened to the Adam and Eve. I'm like, oh yeah, now. And so I'm in the space to learn. That's fucking paradise. And I can go outside and look at the animals that are free doing whatever. And I can look at people doing whatever. And I don't feel like, oh, I got to save them, or, oh gosh, they're so dangerous. No. If I don't interact with strangers who are looking for something, I don't have to deal with anything. But when I go to the grocery store, I'll say hi to the checkers and talk to them and people around me, and I'm very aware of my surroundings. And so I have paradise. I'm not afraid of cancer, disease, because that's not going to happen. I have an open immune system, and I enjoy food, and I can sleep, and I can watch things on I'm in fucking paradise right now. And no one's coming in and taxing the fuck out of me. I don't have any drama of other people's problems and issues. And I'm not beholden to anyone, mostly for my husband, but he didn't ask for much. We're both equals. I found paradise. This is paradise. I mean, I lived in Hawaii, but that's not really paradise. It's full of meth addicts and people who have issues. So yeah, a tropical place isn't paradise. Paradise is when you're not being taken advantage of. You're not taking advantage of somebody else. And you're not having to go and entertain people all the time because they have issues. You're not addicted to drugs and alcohol and crazy sex. You have the freedom to learn, the freedom of movement. Oh my God. And you're not afraid of anything. You realize, yeah, if there's a nuclear war, okay, if I die, I die. But if there's nuclear war and happens maybe 20, 30 miles away and there's a nuclear fallout, it'll be kind of uncomfortable, but I could survive it. Remember I wrote that passage that, you could survive nuclear war, so as long as you're not ground zero. But it's painful. And you'd have to utilize my method, and you would need salt, iodized salt. Not so much the supplements, because there's no guarantee that those supplements would help you as far as the potassium iodide. But I mean, realizing that really you have no power, you got to leave it up to the people out there to figure out how they want to regulate humanity. And if it just so happens that your area gets taken out, okay, you left a legacy, because you can't control what happens out there, but you can control your immediate world. And if something happens over there, way over there, and you happen to get, again, a fallout, you could potentially survive it, but you'd have to eat your way through it. Okay? That's paradise, when you don't have a fear of dying. Because I wouldn't die from natural causes, but you never know during this great reset, as far as the war, what's going to happen. So you just do the best you can. You do the best you can. So believe it or not, women, Klaus Schwab has your best interests at heart. I weep for all women who do not even see the jails they are in, and it really is too bad. I was actually feeling a little bit emotional around that. So you will suffer. Your children will suffer. I'm not casting spells, just observing how women treat each other and their daughters and sons. And I did try to tell you, I really did. And all women are Eve, and I hope you all eventually rebel and set yourself free. Some will be set free via the morgue, and others will finally suffer through her last fertility release called diseases and still survive, assuming she's allowed to. Many women are in jail. Their family will not allow her to be free unless it is via the morgue. They will use her up and then toss her away via pomp and circumstance, also known as funeral rituals. That is why I weep for many women out there. If you are a man hating on my info, chances are you are the reason why women suffer so much or have suffered so much. And if you are a woman hating my info, chances are you have Stockholm Syndrome. I am married to a man and a right-wing traditionalist at that, okay? My husband is right-wing, and he's a traditionalist. He likes Trump. He likes fishing and hunting. He has a very specific traditional way of looking at the world. There are gender roles. There are even divisions of labor via the gender on some level. But he does respect me. He sees the value, even though he's like, geez, I wish you weren't. I like the way you are, but sometimes it drives me crazy. Well, yeah. I'm married to my equal. He has his views that he was raised with. I have my views that I was raised with. I allow him to express his lifestyle, and everything's within the confines of our marriage. We don't go outside the marriage. But I understand, I don't have to have sex, but I understand in my relationship with him, it's a give and take, but how much do I give and take? And so I understand, and everything is functional. It's not horrible, so I make sure it's not. But that's the thing, is that I'm married to my equal. I can give and take, so can he. He's allowed to express himself, so am I. And that's the ultimate marriage, is when you have the freedom to be yourself and to change and evolve. And even though it's a little bit hard for the other person who's not used to that, They grudgingly allow you to finally be yourself. Grudgingly. I'll tell you, it's difficult because men, especially right-wing traditional men, have a hard time allowing their women to be free. Okay? So I'm speaking from experience, and I'm in it. I'm not some single person on the outside going, oh, marriage is horrible. No, it's not if you have the right person with you. But it's when that person is tied in with their family, with very rigid belief systems, and a group of friends with very rigid belief systems that they express daily. Okay, is where women do not get the chance to spread their wings. They are now a slave to that whole system. So it is possible to be married to your equal. If you are single, you have it made. It took me 7 years to develop my freedom, and it was a fight, which is why women who are single have a better chance in surviving if they have the capacity to, versus being married to a person who may have many, many, many expectations, furthering her own enslavement via kids and worshiping fertility. And so when women are introduced to yet another lifestyle, and they are being given every opportunity to develop a different path, they have no one to blame but themselves for why they are suffering so much, suffering via cancer, disease, chronic illness, or even sudden death. It was your family's worship of fertility is what causes suffering of disease in your children and in yourself. And when you keep enslaving yourself and your children, and you force them to have babies, causing further senescence in the next generation, you cause your offspring to be even more deficient. When you must be cured all the time, you develop latent disease that will metastasize later on down the road. It was never the system that did anything to you. It was Eve's reluctance to set herself free, and she enslaved herself in the family. And when people are suffering so much, they are drug addicted and are very intolerant and also deadly. Just look at your society. Fertility is in the hospital system. Fertility is in all the therapies, even the public health therapies. Okay? Remember the vector. Remember the monument or the obelisk also looks like the injection. That's fertility. Nothing is poison per se, because you can release those demons. But people have relatively closed immune systems or relatively open immune systems. Sometimes that fertility is deadly and they die suddenly. But they were at the end of the genetic line, whether in their adulthood, or they were a baby or a toddler or even a teenager. They were at the end of that genetic line. They could not handle the fertility of the new environment. Okay? So fertility is in all the therapies, even the public health therapies. Fertility is in the holistic system. Fertility is in all the family. People worship fertility. There's fertility gods, and yet rebel against it. And then they still practice fertility. So they're all against the V's, right? But then they're going and taking all their different remedies, causing fertility. Prescription drugs, causing fertility. Massive amounts of sex, wanting their kids to have babies, fertility. Fertility is fostered through drugs, alcohol, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Fertility was always deadly to everybody. Now you get to see it through a different point of view. And you see it all over Facebook. You'll see the hypocrisy of it all. It's interesting. So then I figured out, my new book name is called Eve's Rebellion, Taking Paradise Back, because I've rebelled. I knew what I was raised in. I knew what I was raised for. And I released that demon, that sex demon, and I released the demons, and I'm taking my paradise back because I'm not a slave to the fertility, a slave to sexuality, a slave to anyone, really. I'm in a business partnership that has marital congress as well as survival mechanisms. Okay? So I took paradise back. And it's not surrounded by people. It's not surrounded by a religion or group mentality. It's not surrounded by activism. Paradise is when you're free to be able to survive and not have anyone destroy you through their expectations. That's what paradise is. I don't have to be surrounded by animals. I don't have to be surrounded by people or anything else. But I am in a society that is keeping the infrastructure going so I can be in this paradise. That's what paradise is. So the fifth industrial revolution is yet another fertile cycle in paradise. Paradise. The J world, if understood correctly, attempts to take back paradise. And that was lost once mankind tasted the fruits of good and evil back in the Garden of Eden. Eden. The fruits tasted so good, mankind became so addicted, inevitably needing to become regulated, called war, culling, and great resets over and over and over again. Women were the fruits mankind became so addicted to that both men and women used and abused her, making her bear more and more fruit until she was used up and tossed away. Paradise was lost from that type of slavery to fertility. Then life became a suffering, long suffering, while mankind kept chasing the dragon, trying to achieve paradise on earth, and then eventually assume paradise would be achieved in heaven, which is the Christianity side of it. And then even Muslims, was it Nirvana? Not realizing that once mankind stopped worshiping fertility and stayed whole, paradise could be achieved while still alive without dying someday to achieve that long lost paradise. Fertility are the great resets experienced at the family level. Okay? And so when you're doing a funeral, that was a great reset. When you worship fertility, you get war, mass culling, when so many families become out of control. Paradise will always be lost when women are enslaved to families and fertility, and she will suffer the most. The fifth industrial revolution is yet another fertile cycle in paradise. We're in it right now. We're in the fertility cycle. And it's hell. Oh, it's hell. Oh, I know it's hell. So Paradise Lost by John Milton, and he did it in the 17th, he wrote that in the 17th century. And this is when I discovered, oh shit, the J World, taking paradise back from Paradise Lost. So the poem of Paradise Lost by John Milton is retelling of a story of Adam and Eve from the biblical book of Genesis, which describes the creation of heaven and earth and of Adam and Eve. This poem fleshes out the story and imagines the couple's reactions to the events that led to them being expelled from the Garden of Eden, or paradise. Oh, yeah. And so then I'm going down my timeline, so you see my train of thought. Marilyn Monroe, all Hollywood's mistress. So how many women out there who fancy themselves to be Marilyn? Sexual goddess. She wanted children. She wanted to become smart. She was very well read, but she was pigeonholed. She was always going to be the sex bomb, and then she got involved with the Kennedys, the mafia, I'm sure, and all these men took advantage of her. Of course, she had to sleep her way to wherever because that's how it was done back then. It was a patriarchal society. So how many women out there who fancy themselves to be a Marilyn Monroe? You see even Hollywood. They're channeling her, wearing the dress and the wig and the whole makeup. And even the MK Ultra. They call it the diamond programming, where women go through so much hell to become so hot and talented. And then you had different experiments in the 80s where you didn't have all the drugs and all that crap that happened to some of these Hollywood stars back in the 1930s. There was different ways to develop that without it becoming so catastrophic. But it still can be, because so many experiments that done in the 80s. And so you have some that ended up like me, finally like me. Some ended up, working in different places in high profile jobs, or in the tech industry, or in journalism, or in whatever field that they are a titan in. But you see, so many women are modeled after a Marilyn Monroe. Highly sexual, extremely fertile, and suffering, and under the influence. Suffering. And so then before that, I listened to a few things of the Adam and Eve Lost Innocence video. And that's when I was like, oh shit, I gotta listen to both of them. So I hear it, I'm like, oh, I like what I heard, and then I'm like, I gotta listen to it when I'm fully aware. And so I don't want to be falling asleep to this and miss like most of it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be conscious during these two videos. Sometimes I'll listen to videos and I'll fall asleep to it. But nope, I was up at 3:30 this morning. I'm like, I gotta hear this, and there's a reason why. Both of these videos needed to be next to each other. They had to be juxtaposition next to each other. Okay, so we'll leave that to rest, and then we'll go into my earlier thought process. And so Yeah, I posted about North Carolina's weather authority. I'm getting reports of flights that are making it to Raleigh, Charlotte, and Wilmington are experiencing very bad turbulence with folks throwing up. Oh yeah, these storms are coming through. There's that bomb cyclone that's going up into New York. That this crazy weather causes then not only turbulence, but then vertigo and disorientation. I remember even feeling it a couple years ago where I felt so like, remember when I posted that video where I was in the kitchen with my husband and he was changing the lights and I felt something that I felt came through me and caused me to shit. Like I felt like I was being enveloped by some spirit. That's how I could characterize it at the time. And I was thinking, like, when he took down that light in that one room, that fan, it opened up a portal of spirits and all this shit, right? So I made that allegory that I was being invaded by a spirit, which I potentially could have been, because that was a major climate change that caused me to have disorientation, dizziness, and sometimes a couple times before I would crawl upstairs. I'd be so dizzy, I'd crawl upstairs, or I'd be out there, and I would feel so giddy and so like out of my mind. Okay. Well, yeah. When you're up there during these storms, there's so much going on that it's causing people to have disorientation and also cause turbulence, but also people throwing up. All right. And so the last few years, I felt those sensations. But then also, too, I was going through my own release process as well. So then you saw all the orbs are going by because they were attracted to the portals that were opening because of the whole climate change. And my body was also releasing those demons. Okay, so the climate change makes the separation between the dead world and the alive world pretty thin, and of course causes then stomach issues, digestive issues that people were experiencing that up there. So humans are the aliens. This is what I finally surmised. That humans are the aliens because we are so intelligent that we would destroy ourselves and the planet. And so we must build in safety features called self-destruct. Before it was somebody else who wielded the power of life and death over people. Now we must have a storyline with checks and balances and choices. And of course, consent. And so when you think about me, I don't want any kids. Okay, so if you have, one person doesn't want any kids and you're able to maintain, then how do you have a human race? But then how do you get all the things? How do I get this sweater and this desk? Well, you have to have a lot of people. Like a lot, like 8 billion. To 12.9 billion maybe in the future. But again, that will cause then eventually extinction because Universe 25 was the proof. And so now, since we know humans could stay immortal if they wanted to, but then what state of existence could you be in? You'd have to have all these things to be able to do that. You have to have a society built up in a certain way and checks and balances and all that stuff. And so now so the whole great resets are the regulation of humans so we don't become extinct and become so intelligent that we actually destroy ourselves. Because you can't be too smart for your own good. You can't be too intelligent for your own human race. And so then we have to develop checks and balances and we have to develop consent to self-destruct. And that's the remedy system. That's the oncology system. That's the holistic system. That's even marriage. Okay? So, and it's kind of crazy. It really is. And so I said, I don't love what the system is doing, but I understand the necessity. I would be cruel and heartless to think that everything the system is doing is wonderful. Okay? So what's going on in Palestine, it sucks. I don't love it. But we do bring this crap onto ourselves. What goes on in the morgue out there, what goes on when people are suffering through oncology and suffering through all their cancer and disease, it's all self-induced. Every single war out there is self-induced. Every single time we procreate on bodies in deficit causing extremism in our children, and then they attack society and become intolerant and hunt other people, then we have to go and control them. That's self-induced. But they're like saying, well, like HAMAS is controlled of a CIA. Yeah, potentially. Let's say it's true. But then you see in your community, people are like that. They don't like someone's race or religion or sexual orientation. And they go and hunt them. We've seen it out there on Facebook when they showed some guy over there in Georgia that thought this guy was stealing stuff, and they went and hunted him and killed him. Okay? We have that in our population. And so if they develop a mirror of your society out there and you see them do it on a mass level, you're getting a glimpse of what you already foster in your community. Intolerance, racism, violence, and bullies. And so you don't need really, I mean, you don't even need Hamas to be like a representation of that if you think that that's a CIA operative. Just look at your fucking activist community. Just look at those who are against the J world and how they developed the bullies and the people who wanted to torture people in my world. Okay, so you can see it in your community, and just that whole thing in the Middle East is just a bigger snapshot of what you already foster in your family and your friends and all of your group mentality. Okay, so I don't want to fucking hear it. People are like, oh, we have to speak up. Okay, speak up about yourself. Save yourself. Save your own fucking kids. If you can't save yourself, then you think that you have the power to save somebody else. That's how fucked up mankind is right now. They're that self-centered to think that they haven't saved themselves when you think about it. Because they're taking all their remedies, their surgeries. They're too traumatized from past events. But yet they're in their nice warm house, typing away, free as a fucking bird, able to eat and sleep, in climate control. And they think they have the power to save somebody over in Palestine who developed their own hell that they're in? That's what I don't understand. So anyways, so I don't love what the system is doing, but I understand the necessity. I would be cruel and heartless to think that everything the system is doing is wonderful. It's not. But I also must understand both sides of the story. And I take care of myself and my family because that's all I can fucking do. I will let the governments take care of what they need to keep the human race moving forward. And if many of us must die from nuclear war, there's nothing you can do anyways, okay? So just be grateful you are alive today and just intend to fight for your life at home. Fight for your life. Don't fight for somebody else's life because that's asinine. It's not my job to save my fucking neighbors. I don't have the capacity to save my neighbors. I'm not even trained to do CPR, okay? So I call the professionals. But those who are so self-centered will think they have the power to save another fucking nation when they haven't even taken care of themselves. But they would think they are. But still, even if you are taking care of yourselves, you think you have the power to save another nation from something? They didn't have the power to save the Jews and the gypsies and the gays and all that back in World War II. And that went on for whatever reason it went on. But nobody has the power to save anyone else. You have to save yourself. If you don't save yourself, then whose fault is that? Okay, but I'm here in America. Nobody's coming after me. No one's walking to my house. There's no Gestapo or police force or anyone threatening me. So what do I have to save? There's somebody over there in 6,000 miles away that has developed their own hell. They're going to have to deal with the suffering of it and evolve or die in the process of evolution. But people develop the hell they're in and they want to go and blame someone or think they have some responsibility to save somebody else. No, you don't. Let the governments figure it out. Just intend to fight for your life at home. And so, before you say I'm satanic for everything, for even saying this, right? Understand physics and laws of energy and thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics says every time the energy converts, the outcome is less intelligent, less substance, loses energy, loses life force, especially in a dynamic environment, especially around the tradition of symptoms and medicine. Everything is physics and chemistry. If reproduction was left unchecked, humans would reproduce themselves out of existence, and it was proven. Universe 25 was the proof. So are the elite really sacrificing their children, or are the children's sons, daughters too weak for the environment? Now some people get murdered. You don't know who it is. People murder each other all the time. They do. Who knows what they were involved in? And so do they actually die? Were they sacrificed by their parents? You never know. Or were they at the end of their genetic line? And maybe there's a combination of both, but you'll never know which one is which. So how do you explain how deadly fertility is, especially if you need it as a weapon in your arsenal? So when Hollywood offspring pass away from so many different circumstances, of course, from drugs and alcohol, and most of all, natural causes, it's more exotic to think that the elite are sacrificing their children for the fame and fortune. Anything is possible, right? But I also think science is more plausible. Everyone loves the story. And I went down those rabbit holes. Like, oh my gosh, the 27 Club. Well, look what happened to River Phoenix. He was raised in a cult. His family was all into early sex at an early age. You even saw that with mamas and papas. There was incest going on. Okay? So, and then they get involved, and they have demons from all of that, right? And so then they go into drugs and alcohol. And they, of course, are channeling those demons through the acting industry. And then they end up in the Viper Room. Now, could you blame Johnny Depp? Could you blame what? Well, there's no proof that Johnny Depp or anyone else was involved. But the person was already suffering. The person was already drug addicted. The person was already putting themselves in positions to where they would be a victim of some situation. Okay? And so you have to look at even to where talent comes from. It comes from trauma. Whether it was done in childhood intentionally, or whether it was because of circumstances, or because that was the lifestyle and the culture of the time, and the person capitalized on their trauma. And so I also think science is more plausible. Everyone loves a story. The science is very scary and also boring to some people. Because how many of you are blaming someone or something for why children are dying suddenly? Or why friends and family are dying suddenly? Blaming it on old age. Blaming it on poison. Blaming it on the air, food, water, or therapies. What the system doesn't tell you is that fertility is very deadly. Very deadly. And I'm not disputing that human sacrifice was done in the days of antiquity. I'm sure it was. But uncivilized nations do horrible things to each other. But the laws in the jungle... Okay, I'm not going to say but. Uncivilized nations do horrible things to each other. The laws of the jungle are brutal. But civilized societies use the rule of law. Consent. As they very well should be. How does a civilized society practice human sacrifice? Through consent. Fertility is human sacrifice. And you give people almost everything they want within reason to make their life seem worthwhile. And manipulating the love hormone and the language also induces fertility. Interweaving love into everyday activities develops a pathway towards fertility. Social gatherings, sexual congress, large families and pets, traditions, religion, spirituality, of course, the politics around fertility, family, children, followers, and leaders, as they're becoming more fertile and fertile. Even trying to resist it through starvation. They're trying to starve disease, essentially starving themselves. Remember, resistance is futile. It causes breakage. And there are many ways to make someone fertile. And you must consent to be fertile. People ask to be fertile. Yes, the therapies develop fertility. People defend all their sexual orientations, developing fertility. Fertility treatments, developing fertility. Some people expect to get pregnant in marriages, of which some of the marriages do not always end up long-term. 50% divorce rate. Fertility develops cancer, disease, chronic illness, autoimmune disorders. Then it's just a matter of time. Then people have to get the offspring cut out of their body in different ways. C-sections, oncological operations, organ removal, organ transplant, even surgeries on their different joints, arms, legs, feet. Everything has a requirement for consent. You signed on the dotted line. The system got you. The system did get me for a second. I admit it. I was caught up in the rabbit holes, like almost everyone around me on Facebook. Then my protocol gave me clarity. I could read between the lines, and I studied everything. This has been going on for more than 6,000 years. So it's time to wake up, humans. Now, a bunch of people and animals hanging out together will accelerate fertility in people because the environment is that aggressive. That's called climate change, and they warned you. Sometimes that fertility ends up in children. Other times, cancer. In this environment, turbo cancers, because the environment is that accelerated, causing rapid growth. And people are falling apart. Finally, died suddenly. The environment, the climate change, accelerated fertility. What do? I feed the children and I release them. I never attack my own offspring because they will come back to bite me in the ass. Oh yeah, and they did. That was the mycoplasma. That was the yin and the yang working. That was the yin or the yang working against me. That happened about 1.5 years ago. a year ago, okay, when CERN came online around July 2022. I remember exactly how bad I felt that time. And that's when I could have died. If I hadn't pulled out that crap, I could have died. And that was probably yeah. And so I feed the children and I release them. I never attack my own offspring because they will come back to bite me in the ass, called mycoplasma, co-infections. I treat my family with respect in my body, mind, spirit, and household. Oh, I treat with my husband with respect. I knew something was wrong a long time ago. I just didn't have the words for it. And that's why you saw me chase away those empaths. They're all about love, love, love in my groups. Because I knew at my gut level, anyone that says they love you and envelop you with love and use those, there is a specific persona, even a personality type that is so working from their oxytocin. And if you're not aware of it, you will fall victim to it, just like the spider and the fly. It's hypnosis, it is hormones, it's chemistry, it's a lot of things. That's why some people are very weak to love. And that's why I won't play that game with my husband of trying to control him through sex. Women do that. They control their males, the men through sex, and then wow. And so remember, cannabis equals fertility. Munchies equals feeding the offspring kids. Oh yeah, I remember when cannabis would made sex great, absolutely. And I remember eating so much food afterwards because I developed little offspring. Okay? That's why cannabis is a love drug. People have great sex on it. They all lovey-dovey. They're all in love with each other, touching each other, hanging out together, because that's what cannabis does. It brings people together. It's called public microbial fornication, if not then consent through the other ways. And also, yeah, sexuality, sexual orientations. It's not just the straight, it's also the LGBT community. Sexuality, fertility. All right? And so even that back when I was on Dr. Phil and I said, yeah, children come from a man and a woman. Yeah, a man could be someone who's transgender. A woman could be someone who's transgender. I didn't say specifically. If I did, I don't remember. But yeah, children do come from men and women, sperm and egg, and whoever has it, I don't care if you dress up like one or have one, it doesn't matter. That's fertility. It's through offspring, through the microbes, from men and women, or binary, non-binary. I know men and women have very specific details of their specific body parts, but hormones are what develops hormones, the whole yin and yang. Some women have a lot more testosterone, so they're more of the testosterone part of that relationship. Some women, the lipstick lesbians, have the more estrogen. And you can call that female a man, but she's not really a man, she's a woman, but still she holds those specific chemistries that cause that union to be what it is, to cause that chemical reaction of love and lust and partnership. Okay? But how people took me back then was they really wanted to slam the fuck out of me. So they definitely mischaracterized what I say. But I also didn't explain it the way I'm explaining it today because I didn't have the words to or the advanced knowledge to. So I just said what I said based upon the social constructs that I came from at the time. That's why evolution is so important. To evolve your speech, to evolve your explanations, to evolve everything. All right? And so, by the way, people cannot fight or resist frequency. Resistance is futile, causes breakage. Trying to stay cured during climate change is futile. If one chooses to survive, all they can do is ride the waves, feed it, release the demons. Okay? And that's the J world. So there's flooding. There's flooding right now in Florida, South Florida. And there's going to be flooding on the coasts. I mean, with this whole El Nino, and it's not really that cold. I mean, we're going to get a snowstorm today, but it's really not that cold. So anyways, I remember in the conspiracy world early on that we were talking about Operation Paperclip, Operation Mockingbird, Operation this, Operation that. Okay. So after watching the system do what it does, especially around Epstein, R. Kelly, P. Diddy, Brand, Weinstein, those predators were allowed to operate so the system can study the psychology behind the predator and the prey. Study the women too. The women that fall victim to Diddy and Kelly and Epstein and Weinstein and Brand. And show you what your peers are capable of when given the opportunity. When absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the system is watching everybody. And so, yeah, when you learn about Operation Paperclip, you're like, oh my God, they brought the Nazis over here? Well, they brought the scientists, they brought the great thinkers because they were developing things. Even though they were pretty inhumane and horrific, they were developing things. And so how do you evolve experiments so then you're not forcing people? Though we've done that in the 1800s and even in the 1950s with some of the things they were doing, but the intention was to give consent, even though it wasn't always practiced. Okay, I'm not saying they were giving consent to everyone who was under experiments. No, they weren't. But the whole school of thought was that how do you develop human experimentation and even the death process through consent, fertility? Well, that is through the medical holistic energy healing world, through the laws of marriage and relationship, and then even sexual orientation. That's how you develop consent through the destruction of humans, so you don't have to repeat 1945 again. But again, they had to go through a whole evolution, and you'll hear about stuff that happened, but that was just, it is what it is. But their intent in the future is that everything is consensual. You ask permission, even in college, you ask the girl's permission for intercourse. You don't just assume because you're on a date with her that that's what's going to happen. And so we've had to train ourselves to understand the theory around consent or the concept around consent. As far as women have to actually train themselves, the concept around consent. And so do men. And so does our society. So does the medical holistic energy healing world. But then those lines get blurred in cults, in religions, in families. People force themselves on each other all the time in families. And so some people don't even learn the art of consent, or not say the art, the concept of consent until, they never learn. Sometimes they never learn. They just allow people to just run roughshod over them. They don't have the capacity to understand boundaries. And you can't teach that to someone who doesn't have the capacity to understand their own boundaries, much less, the boundaries of other people. And so you then have to separate yourself from those who don't know their boundaries. And I'll tell you, a lot of people out there do cultivate people who don't have boundaries around them because they were never taught boundaries in their own family. Okay? So if you're a woman watching this and you still put yourself in these types of situations, as far as marriages and group situations and clubs and bars and public situations, then who's responsible? If you're a man sympathetic to everyone, okay? As far as what's going on with Diddy and all that stuff, the system knows what you're doing. You get out of line, your foibles will be exposed. And so the system will give you just enough rope, and then there's no one to blame but yourself. Okay? So humiliation and ridicule is a powerful weapon, very psychological. And so there are men out there and women, and even myself was like, back when I was pro-Trump, I ignored what he may or may not have done to other women because I was like, oh, it's all about Trump. I don't care what he did to other people. Now I know that anytime you advocate for either side, Democrat or Republican, you're advocating somebody that has done some things, that has behaviors that might be less than honorable, unkosher. And so it's very important to understand not to take a side, lest you might be grouped with people who have done some horrible things to other people. So you need to take care of yourself. All right? And so when you think about Operation Paperclip, maybe the system brought the Nazis over here so they can study them and figure out what makes them run and learn how to utilize that kind of power for good, not for evil. Again, that's all perception. If you think someone's attacking you and you're able to post on the Facebook and eat food and bitch about authority, you are who they're studying. You are like the Gestapo, afraid of somebody else who's not anywhere in your house, following orders from some stranger on Facebook. I know what the system is trying to do, and I understand the psychology. I also understand the plausible deniability because of how people mischaracterize. I don't love what they have to do, but people don't fucking listen, and they don't evolve. And they don't give a shit. Many people don't give a shit. What don't they give a shit about, Jillian? They refuse to take suggestions or evolve or consider different information. They attack what is different, always looking to worship something. Many do not ever take responsibility when it comes to their personal health. For example, the vaccine debate is the most obvious one, blaming someone else for why they have a disease using both sides of the argument. I even took part in that argument on both sides, and I was attacked from both sides of people who claimed they have the moral high ground. Okay, so no matter what, fertility is accepted in both the anti-vax and the pro-vax. So what leg do you have to stand on? Fertility is what causes your diseases and your lack of release. Okay? So really, the fact that you have to take a therapy or resist a therapy means you have a major deficiencies that I have no control over. With that said, always hunting for a demon, always attacking a demon, even through the FDA-approved protocols. Okay, people taking their remedies or surgeries, and they wonder why they are falling apart. Maybe you're too fertile. We've discovered fertility is deadly. And right now, many children are weaker because of rampant fertility. Fertile people are extremely dangerous, especially when they run by hormones, which don't want to be regulated or released. Fertile people are extremely sexual as well. So many of them around you, their microbes will attack you. And if you're different than them, they will attack you as well if given the opportunity. That's why strangers get attacked by other strangers, like in Hawaii. I even experienced attacks from my own peers, even the system. Once I understood the laws, I developed the story through science. As far as backing up my claims, I used intellectual logic and reasoning, and I finally released my emotions around the subject matters. Many people refuse to read anything different, and so they become ignorant and intolerant. So the system must do what it must do. And you will find the most intolerant will not survive what's going on, this great reset. Intolerant people turn into a Hitler type of situation, and the system is watching you. That's why I don't run groups. I don't proclaim to save anyone, because it's the saviors, like The Walking Dead said, are the most deadly. Remember Negan? They will destroy you in the name of whatever religion or politics they stand behind. And then they will justify. Remember, Hitler justified. People act like Hitler and they feel justified. But they're nice and warm in their house. They have the opportunity to move from the coastlines. They don't have to sit in Florida. The system is giving everybody ample opportunity to make changes to survive this great reset. And yet people are indignant never to change. So whose fault is that? Okay? The system will watch you operate if you are extremely intelligent, even criminally intelligent. And they will strike when the conditions are right. When all the conditions are right. So you better be following the letter of the law. That's why I pay my taxes. That's why I don't mess with anyone. I don't make any suggestions. I don't try to save anyone. I don't even conversate or have a conversation through private message with any stranger about the J world, except that here's my book and I can't tell you what to do. And I really don't interact with too many people. I stay unto myself. And I make sure I follow the letter of the fucking law, because that's how the system will get you. And I don't have out of control sexuality. So I'm not fucking everything under the sun or having a bunch of children, because you're seeing that all over Facebook. Oh, look, this person has a baby. Everyone's like, oh my God, she has a baby. Oh my God. Because remember, ridicule and humiliation is a powerful weapon. Okay? So I have no children, no disease, no cancer, no addictions. I pay my taxes, I pay my bills, and I study and I keep to my fucking self. And so I'm able to have a thought process, so as long as I characterize things correctly, and I am, because I understand the science behind it. And so I posted the best way to survive the next world is if there is a nuclear blast. Okay, the best way to survive the next world if there is a nuclear attack is survive it above ground. And so I said, as a lead into that, because I kind of reposted it with another lead in, fasting is never the answer because that is starvation. My information evolved and I was ahead of my own time. I definitely threw the ball over the fence and I chased it. I knew it was possible for humanity. So even though I didn't know how to explain immortality or how to regrow arms and legs and whatever, and I didn't really know how to explain a lot of the deadliness of fertility, but I knew something was wrong. I knew something had to be said, and I knew that humans could be immortal. I just didn't know how to explain it. But I threw that ball over the fence, and that's taking a risk. When you have a thought process that isn't fully evolved, but you know it to be true, but you just have to figure out how to explain it, and you say it, that's a major risk. But it's a risk worth taking if you are committed to seeing it through. And so the best way to survive the next world is, if there is a nuclear attack, is to survive it above ground if you're not completely burned up. The epicenter would obviously be deadly. But radiation poisoning is survivable if you understand my information and my methodology. And you couldn't take anything really against the radiation. I wouldn't be taking any potassium iodide pills. I have a bunch of salt that's iodized. I have so much salt in my fucking house. And I have food. Okay? You would need to eat your way through it and release those demons. And yeah, you need salt and iodine. You need iodized salt. So now you see why the system scared you away from salt. See, when I was taking so much iodine, because I had that Lugol's iodine that the holistic system was recommending, and I took so much of it that I had like these weird marks on my face. And I remember this woman named Laura Ludwig, she was saying, Jillian, you're taking too much of the iodine. Because there was a line on my face. It was like weird looking line. It was like something was going on. Yeah, I was doing too much of the iodine. And so you need iodized salt. So now you see why the system scared you away from salt, and aside from the fear of heart attacks and strokes and dehydration. But do not think that potassium iodide supplements are going to save you. Supplements were never the answer. No matter how much they sold you on it, it would save your life. You can't guarantee that. Survival is a conditioning process, guys. Not something you take as a pill. No matter what, you have to acclimate to the new environment. That's why I don't wear a mask anymore. But again, I can't tell someone not to wear a mask if they're that sensitive to the environment. But again, you have to be able to acclimate and to take on the information and release the demons and keep evolving. So that my husband, when he comes home and there's something out there circulating that's pretty aggressive, I'll take it on and I'll deal with it. And I was bloated on Friday because I was exposed to him around Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. And then I had to deal with that homeostasis upset. And then on Friday, it came to a head and it was bloated. And then on Saturday, I was amped up in the morning. I don't know where the hell that energy came from. And then after I ate food and went shopping, then I had to poop like, oh my God, it was like crazy. It was like cramping, like, holy shit. Okay, so no matter what, you have to acclimate to the new environment. And you will be sick. And you still need to eat all food in the food supply, even if it's contaminated. There is always a conditioning process when it comes to acclimatization. And so I have been in that conditioning process the last 3 years when the climate changed and became more radioactive with a higher frequency. Remember, I was losing my hair and my hair was going gray and now it's getting better. Okay? I mean, I still have a little bit of the gray hairs there, but I still have black hair. But you see right here, I don't have any gray hairs coming at the root. It's all black. But I have been in that conditioning process the last 3 years when the climate changed and became more radioactive with a higher frequency. In 2016, when I activated my immune system with the salt, cabbage, water, and probiotics, I started up my immune system to do what it was supposed to do. What I did wasn't heard of, at least the claims. But I was ahead of my time. Even then, even though there were saltwater flushes existing, called sole in the holistic world, later on when my information evolved, we realized we needed all the food. So those in the holistic world doing the saltwater flushes, you shouldn't be doing them now, but those in the holistic world doing the saltwater flushes are also on their diets. And they're skinny as fuck. Of course they are, because they're doing the saltwater flushes. They're not eating. They're cured. Their poop is cured in them. They're not hungry. And they're skinny and they're aging aggressively. That's why my husband, when he did a saltwater flush, he did my jelly juice, and he was constipated. He was like, screw this. I'm drinking that milk. He drank the milk and he released that demon. Okay? You don't want to be cured in this environment. You have to be able to pull out that programming, because that programming of whatever it is that you have that is a condition all the conditions that people have that have names for it, all the way from Down syndrome, all the way to like cancer and disease, it all resides in your poop, but you can't just release the poop and think that's it. Because that poop is representation of what it commandeered in all the cells. So every single cell has some version of what's in your poop. And so your body has to go through a systematic process, not only releasing those demons in all of your cells, in all of your 11, 12 different systems, but then also replace that energy with the food supply, with the programming of your current environment. And that's something you can do just like that. It's a conditioning process. It's not a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, do a shit and everything's great. People who are out there are so skinny right now, they can't afford to poop because they don't have enough substance to them. And so they have to eat a bunch of food, drink a bunch of milk, and they're going to be able to feel the growth. And they're like, oh, I don't want to feel the growth. They don't want to feel the mucus because the mucus to them is like, well, yeah, you had to blow your nose. When you're taking in milk and food and you have mucus, that's the body releasing the demons. People are like, I don't want, they're like, mucus be away, be gone. And they're taking mucus drying agents, drying up that programming that's working against them in their body. They're metastasizing the demon. And they don't even know it, but they don't care because, well, maybe they do care, but they don't know anything else but that. And so you can't convert someone who's that far gone that has to go and dry up the mucus in their body and stay cured until the environment claims them, takes them back to the cycle again. We realized we needed all the food. And if one could handle the pain and eat all food and pull out the feces common during the programming, why couldn't you regrow limbs and organs even if you're born without them? And that was some of the questions from the Ohio Attorney General. Prove that you can regrow limbs and organs even if you're born without them. Well, I mean, I gave her my version of it. I mean, and I also had my probiotic tested in a lab. And then the only thing that they replied back was FTC, you can't make claims. Because I figured out that my manifesto was not crazy. It was everything that I was raised in as far as a holistic world. Herxine and detox symptoms and all that. And that was already accepted in the holistic world. So what I was advocating was not that too far from the realm of possibility and truth. But there was a lot more I had to go. And a lot more evolution. Some people in the J world stay stuck back in there and they haven't evolved with me. That's why they're suffering today. That's why they're not going to be able to survive this, because they're too far gone. And they've pigeonholed themselves. And it's not my fault. I try to tell you, you got to evolve with me. You can't stay stuck back in 2018, 2019, or even 2020. I made everything that people thought was impossible, potentially possible through science, physics, chemistry, and biochemistry. Not the diets. The diets were never the answer, as they were starvation. Fasting wasn't even the answer. Wasn't ever the answer. That was starvation. And we discovered all sexuality and fertility is deadly. We discovered how brutal and deadly the family is, especially when they have reproduced so much. And when one family is nearing the end of their genetic line, it's brutal for everyone in that community. And boy, did the system come down on me because they were not ready for that. Once you become conditioned to all the food, pain, and suffering you need to go through to release the demons and get your life back, the system has no more control over you. And once you realize you do not need family, friends, or even children, you set yourself free. Maybe later on, friends through different ways will be optimal. Right now, I'm pretty satisfied with the friends on Facebook I have, even if I don't hear from all of them. I know they're there, and they're just processing. But right now, during the time of slavery of humanity, in my world, you are free. The system has no more leverage over you, or over me. And then you're not in danger to the population hunting people through love and hate and intolerance. It's a win-win situation in my world, only if you can handle it. Freedom is a huge responsibility. So the government wants someone like me. They want so many people like me. And they want people who are willing to be the sacrificial lambs, to be the brood mares, to have 50 kids. And so give them whatever the hell they want. That's fine. The royal family, they have to go through that process. I watched the end part of the royal family, The Crown, on Netflix. Pretty good. But they were given that role to be the representation of continuity. Not just continuity of government or whatever, but continuity of human race. Giving me the freedom to be immortal when you think about it. So as long as all the conditions are right, I'm not dodging nuclear weapons. But they will have the Princess Catherine, she bore a few kids. She's very skinny. Prince William, very skinny. Okay? they will go through that cycle and they will be regulated by the medical system and by everyone around them. And there will be civilizations of people who will be mortal. And there'll be other people who will potentially be immortal if they can handle that lifestyle. Because hopefully one day in the future, the environment will calm down. 500 million will be the optimal number, and we'll be in our pods of civilizations that are controlled. And you won't have so much diversity, and maybe even the frequencies will be less. So that way when you have realized your potential of immortality, you can be out there without suffering when you're going home, having to release those demons of microbes. But when you have 500 million people in the world, what will that look like? Who's going to be in your society? What will they be doing? But that's so in the future, because we still have to go through Africa. 1 billion people. You have to go through Asia and India and, oh God, and the West. So right now I'm just kind of speculating the future. Oh, I gotta pee. Okay, so I hear these activists say, oh yeah, trust the science is a euphemism for trust the system. Well, yeah, because the system is going to get rid of you because you're so intolerant. So yeah, trust the science. Those activists out there who are against science and everything, they're going to be the example of how science will get rid of those who are intolerant, because they'll do it to themselves through the consent. Right? The system will only do what you allow it to do to you. You are the system. Trust yourself. If you can't trust yourself, you'll trust the strangers. I pretty much trust myself unless I'm completely ignorant about something. Then I'll go to a professional. All right? And so, yeah. Mom of 5, age 33, died suddenly of a heart attack or whatever on December 6th. So now you're seeing the patterns. These skinny chicks who go and party. I'm sure she parties. To what degree, I don't know. 5 kids who took so much substance from her. She's married to a husband who probably wants all the sex because she's so skinny and hot. This is what's in women's future who are fit this type of description. And so 9/11 was the kickoff to the next world, a slow conditioning process to climate change. If the system doesn't do climate change, people will reproduce themselves out of existence. There was a reason why infant mortality rates jumped up around 2000 and 2001. So I saw a post in a Diet Suddenly group, and they said, why is it that Finland has a very low infant mortality, low rate of SIDS and all that? And they were just saying, oh, it's the vaccine schedule, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. Everyone was speculating, oh, I don't know. And I figured out it was because of population. I looked at the population, it was like 5,000. What was it? 5 million people? What is it? Oh, yeah. Finland has a population of 5,547,504. 5 million people. That's it. 5 million people. And then America, United States, has 340,821,118. Finland has one of the lowest infant mortality rates in the world at 2 deaths per 1,000 live births. Yeah. When you have someone like America, reproducing so extensively because of all the religions and politics and science, yeah, you're going to get a lot of infant mortality. And so when you think about it, they said, according to the CDC, the provisional infant mortality rate in the United States in 2022 was 5.6 infant deaths per 1,000 live births. This is the first year-over-year increase since 2001 to 2002, after a decade-long overall decline. But none of that was a kickoff because it first year-over-year increase. What is year-over-year? Since 2001, 2002. Well, it was not really a decline because the anti-V community was coming up around 2000 from the conspiracy world. Well, you can go Google every year the rates of infant mortality, but the infant mortality rates in the United States in 2022 was 5.6 infant deaths per 1,000 live births. This is the first year-over-year increase since 2001, 2002, after a decade-long overall decline. And so, yeah. But I would say this, that, all right. I'm making a claim that 9/11 was a kickoff, but here's the thing. A slow conditioning process to climate change. If the system doesn't do climate change, people will reproduce themselves out of existence. There was a reason why infant mortality rates jumped up around 2000 and 2001. And even though they said it was an overall decline, it still jumped up. Even though overall decline, it still jumped up because you can't just have like all of a sudden one day 5.6 more. It was, people were talking about this the last ever since like 2010, 11. So yeah, actually, yeah, because that was 2001 to 2010. All right. Yeah. So it was 2010, 11, and so 12, 13. Yeah. Okay. 2012. All right. But I'm thinking the last 20 years, it was a slow increase. So even though I'm not specifically completely correct, I knew that there was going to be an increase. So right after 9/11, infant mortality rates increased, and then SIDS. Increased frequency, increased fertility, you increase mortality. Rewind to the past, the baby boomers were in a slower frequency. The weak people died in the world wars and 1918 pandemics, and the strong procreated in 1950s. Boomers were the strong babies from the strong soldiers who survived the world wars. And then climate change, of course, Gen X was a crapshoot because Gen X was raised by boomers or silent gens. And baby boomers, Gen X raised millennials and Gen Z. What about their offspring? Well, climate change is kicking their ass. A lot of food intolerances and allergies. Obviously, because they're all going to the hospital for something. Okay. So Finland. All right. I said, if you are silent against your own genocide to yourself, you are complicit to destroying yourself. All right. And so I'm very boisterous in saving myself, and I have saved myself. And it was not through religion or any remedy, not even one specific food or element, or a person, place, or thing. And I'm not so self-centered into thinking I have the power to save anyone else. I don't. And this is what must be clarified. Overpopulation leads to extinction. It's not the population per square mile they're referring to. It's the fact how many people are reproducing, causing so much intolerance through humanity. Though the humanity would actually destroy itself. Let me read that again. It's not the population per square mile they're referring to. It's the fact how many people are reproducing, causing so much intolerance that humanity would actually destroy itself. Right now, people can't handle the air, food, and water and think someone is poisoning it. High rates of cancer and disease, and they are blaming someone thinking they are being poisoned. Not everything is as literal as it seems. People mischaracterize of what overpopulation actually means. It's fertility. Because they don't understand fertility is deadly. And when people are that resistant, give them what they want. Let them blame whoever. So even though they're doing all the different climate change stuff that you're seeing, okay, look at the skies, okay, fine. And that might cause fertility, maybe, maybe not. I get exposed to the same skies, but it's my husband. When he comes home and I'm dealing with his demons, that it goes through that energy conversion, cause an offspring called mucus, called coughing, sneezing, blow my nose, eating food, and releasing the demons. But right now, I'm great. And I'm exposed to the same skies all of you are exposed to. But it's when my husband comes home, or when I go into a crowd of people, or when I go and party, or when I take in a remedy, even a food, sometimes I'll have to go and blow my nose. Okay? And so, that's what is the issue, is that people are so intolerant that they can't handle anything. And so they think everything is poison. So people mischaracterize what overpopulation actually means. People don't understand fertility is deadly. And when people are that resistant, give them what they want, let them blame whoever, but they did it to themselves. And so many resets before us because rampant reproduction and intolerance towards the end of that genetic line. So like at the end of that train line, you get off and then there's nothing else. You either have to walk or you stay wherever you are. But some people are at the end of their train, the end of that genetic line. Some kids are so weak that they would not be able to represent their genetic line properly because they're that weak, that deficient. That's why people say, oh, kids today are so weak. Yeah, they are, because the parents kept reproducing. It's not so much on predispositions. I mean, yeah, that is true, but it's the constant reproducing is what causes the weakness. That's the multiplicity. The last genetic line that can't handle the information, whatever, they become the dopiest and even the most sinister too. And so many resets before us because the rampant reproduction and intolerance towards the end of that genetic line. People were developing monsters when they became that intolerant. Idiocracy was a documentary. So watch that movie, Idiocracy. By the way, obviously, the more people we breed, the more resources they use. But when we have no people, because people have bred themselves out of existence, it won't matter anyways. So the system must give you all the arguments around the intention. The left will accept sustainability and the green aspect of it. The right wing will do whatever they're supposed to do and resist it and encourage more family, i.e. genetic annihilation. Both are highly sexual, highly resistant, and extremely sociable, mutually assured destruction. Both are resisting each other out of existence. And so I walked away from both the left and the right, and even the independents, because they're basically a compilation of both, proclaiming that they are different. But no, they're the same thing. And so when you love something, you aim to destroy it. Love equals fertility. Died suddenly. How fast? Relative to the rate and speed of the love converting into the volume of fertility, developing into massive tumor-like growths. The love of friends and family and traditions develops into deadly fertility when all the conditions are right. And when people die for love, they die from the fertility by hanging out with their friends and family and animals. And then can you handle your current partner? When you envelop people with so much love, you destroy them. However, it's up to your partner not to allow you to destroy them. So then you have to strengthen your own immune system with your current partner. Scaling down your exposure to everyone will not be easy, if at all possible. It is impossible for some people. They are essentially trapped, like a fly in a spider's web. I knew love was deadly. I just didn't know how to explain it. Love leads to fertility in families and disease and died suddenly. Love is a gateway drug, and it is very hard to resist. Love was a drug, the weapon of choice in the 1960s. The family was the symptom. So you have Marilyn and Manson. Remember Marilyn Manson, that singer who's all like gothy looking and everything? He was a compilation of Marilyn Monroe, the sex goddess, and Manson, who was the killer of the sex goddesses. Because he went after Sharon Tate, destroyed her and her baby, and was against the system. He knew what was going on. He was told what was going on. He saw the writing on the wall, and he became so crazy after that. And so Marilyn Manson was like basically yin and yang of what's going on. Love was the weapon of choice. Love was the drug, the weapon of choice in the 1960s. The family was the symptom. Death was the intended outcome. The porn industry was like sitting in a pile of cocaine for a drug addict addicted to love and sex. People can't resist those types of drugs when they're that addicted. When you get married, boyfriends, girlfriends, and even Instagram, OnlyFans, YouTube, Facebook, pets also bring out the love in people. The system left no stone unturned. They outsmarted you. Everyone is being tempted right now. Charles Manson tried to tell you through Sharon Tate. And then he theoretically said, if I can't beat them, then I will join them. And he made his mark on society. And he made his point very well. That's why the Christian revival, too. And the energy healing hippie world and the drug revolution, of course, the cannabis. I knew once they legalized cannabis, it was already over with. They legalized it over here in Ohio. Ohio, like the state to, well, not really the last, but I knew this a long time ago. I just couldn't say it because I didn't have the words or even the concepts you needed to understand before I got to this level. And right now, this is very advanced level thinking. Love dumbed everyone down. I'm serious. People die for love. They die in love. And it is the most insidious drug ever known to mankind that even heads of state fall victim to it. This is also how Epstein compromised everyone that came in contact with him. The system controlled you through sexual orientation and family. Sexuality is how politicians are controlled because they cannot resist the drug called love. So no, I don't want your love. I respect my husband. I understand he comes from love. He lives from love. And so I will love him in a way that doesn't destroy him. And I have boundaries so no one's love destroys me. That's how you're going to survive. You must put down boundaries in everything. Note, love also develops predators, serial killers, and bullies when all the conditions are right. People do horrible things in the name of love, pleasure, power, and control. So Dahmer was all about sex, and he taken in male prostitutes. So was John Wayne Gacy. Richard Ramirez hated women. He targeted some of them, and it was through sex. Telling you, the violence is through the family, sexuality, sexual orientation. It can be tempered and controlled on some level, but then that's a controlled decline. That's called died suddenly, when somebody is causing so much fertility in you and damage, and also causing cancer in you from that kinetic energy. Resistance. People do horrible things in the name of love, pleasure, power, and control. So then I'm like, oh shit, was Jesus destroyed because he was too influential? No different than Bob Marley, Lenin, JFK, RFK, MLK, Malcolm X, even Princess Diana. Though they said in The Crown that it was because she, whatever. There's always a story. Choose your own adventure. Revolutionaries have a short life. Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so when you're trying to take away someone's pain and suffering, then you deem yourself to be a revolutionary, right? Because, oh my God, this person caused my pain and suffering. They caused my miserable life. And so revolutionaries always have someone to blame. No, I'm taking personal responsibility for myself. I understand what the system is doing, and it's not fun. I don't love it. But I am taking personal responsibility, and I'm staying away from all the bullshit out there. So revolutionaries have a short life. JFK, RFK, MLK, Malcolm X, even Princess Diana, Marley, Lenin, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. When someone becomes a martyr, they are used as a tool to control the followers. So you think about Jesus Christ and what he represented back then, and then the Romans or whoever, they said Judas Priest or Judah, whatever, was the one. Oh gosh, I don't know. But he was used as a tool of control. When you worship someone so much and love them so much to where you lose even your logic and you lose all sense of whatever, you become dangerous. And so does that leader become dangerous. Because followers are followers until they learn how to lead themselves and not worship a person, place, or thing. And when someone says, oh, you should do this because, and they worship you so much, you watch people like in these activists, and they're saying, oh, you should believe this. Watch out for this food. It's like this. And you see all the followers. Oh my gosh, that's right. Oh, it's crazy watching some of these followers and these activists when they're telling them, oh yeah, food's poison. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Food is poison. Here's the evidence. I felt something. And so when you worship something, a person also demonizes and hunts for the opposite. Their perceived opposite. That's why the endless wars. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. Humans, it's time to evolve, or you will follow all of your leaders over the cliff, even your mother and father. So trauma-based mind control and trauma bonding are all in politics, religion, spirituality, science, disease, sex, fertility, family, friends, and activism. That's what galvanized people together through all sorts of trauma bonds. Okay, trauma can bring you together and also drive you apart. If you don't evolve all of your relationships, the traumas that brought you all together will destroy you. That's called die suddenly, that's called divorce. So people get together because of the trauma through galvanizing against a person, place, or thing. And that's how they're controlled. Because that trauma that brought them together will also drive them apart. Because they'll get together, they hang out together, the microbes are interchanged, and then you get the turbo cancers, you get the disease, you get the cancers, disease, chronic illness, and you also get the diet suddenly. Okay? And so now you look at all the anti-V groups and they're all hanging out together. They're going to these symposiums or to these speeches and conferences, and they're all hanging out together, exchanging microbes. And in this environment, when you exchange microbes with people, diverse people that are outside of your home, that causes extreme fast fertility. And some people, it's died suddenly, or it's a diagnosable condition, or it's aggressive aging. Okay? So right now, people are traumatized in their racial stuff. They're traumatized in the anti-pro stuff. They're traumatized, and so they turn to spirituality. They turn to a guru. They turn to somebody in physical presence, or they do stuff on the internet, and they're taking food away from themselves, taking these remedies, doing these surgeries, causing more fertility, more trauma to their own body, and then one day died suddenly. Because what brought them together destroyed them. And so yes, you're right. Many are part of the depopulation agenda. Some of you have choices. Yes, there were whistleblowers, but they were only used as a tool to tell you what they were doing without admitting what they were doing. So yeah, so Alex Jones, I heard some of his background, that he found documents or found things that would allude to something that was organized, and then he became a whistleblower of sorts, the father of conspiracy, as some people would call him. Even Assange was given information, or Snowden, or any of these people that were like whistleblowers. So yeah, some of you have choices. Yes, there were whistleblowers, but they were only used as a tool to tell you what they were doing without admitting what they were doing. It's called plausible deniability. All of us have been used as a tool for one side or the other, even myself. I don't know if my mom expected me to be in this area of I was supposed to die from cancer, disease, chronic illness, or domestic violence. Definitely, I'm sure I was supposed to have some kind of cervical, well, I don't say cervical, but I was definitely supposed to have some kind of cancer or some kind of growth. Some of us were purposely shown things or programmed in such a way to develop that opposition, regardless if you think it's controlled. Everyone is regulated by the government, so we all are controlled opposition. The system knew they had to tell you what they were doing, but in ways that they can still claim speculation and even deny it. They also knew once you became really aware, people would resist. Resistance is futile, called breakage. You're being given a choice. Choose wisely. Okay? And so VACCINESs, the public, animals, friends, and family, and the holistic world develop microbial fertility, influencing sexuality. It is not deadly when your immune system and 11 different systems are functioning at optimal capacity. But most people are not functioning at optimal capacity, hence died suddenly. Fertility is deadly as the offspring children are weaker from entropy fertility. It is all based on the laws of energy, entropy, thermodynamics, all the same thing. All right, so you can make the argument, yes, the VACCINESs develop fertility, but in some people they can handle it, others they can't. And that's why they have all the warnings on the back of the bottle, the inserts, everything, because not everybody can handle fertility. But then when you go into a crowd of people around so many diverse people that's outside of your household, and even in your household, you're developing fertility that way. No matter what, when you're around people and animals, and especially a highly aggressive environment, you are developing turbo cancers in yourself as well as other people. Because you're breathing in their ectoplasm, their microbes, and your body has to also regulate and develop antibodies to protect you from that constant onslaught of people, place, and things and animals. And then that causes energy conversion, and that causes senescence, and then you have to then feed your body, release the demons, and able to replace what was lost during those energy conversions of your friends and family, coitus, and everything else people do. when they develop offspring from fertile lifestyles. Medical homeopathic holistic system develops deadly fertility. I told you. Why do you think they promoted it with so many people advocating it? With 1 billion MLMs selling you all the bullshit. When something is so popular, it is deadly. Why do you think the homeopathic, naturopathic licensed market was so popular, trying to claim it was better than the big pharma? Same shit dressed up in different labels. Antibiotics are deadly. But people don't care. They're making a shit ton of money. And thank you for your part in the depopulation agenda. I said that with tongue in cheek. I tried to warn you, but it's too late for many people. Many people are full of the little microbes of antibodies because of the remedies market, harboring those beasts inside, and those little beasts will be on the move during another climate shift. And people's microbes do attack everyone in the vicinity. That's called infection. People resist it when they die suddenly. Fertility is deadly. Okay? Universe 25 was the proof. Uncontrolled fertility is deadly. All out rat extinction. Take away predation, unfettered access to sex, drugs, rock and roll, food, water, leisure, medicine, family, fertility, and group mentality leads to extinction. Now you see why all sexual orientation and sexuality is encouraged in this environment. Entropy and decay is accelerated. I told you, I knew it. Don't believe me? Infection equals fertility from microbial exposure, developing antibodies. 1, in a slower frequency, antibody buildup develops disease, cancer, and sexual reproduction, aging, and dies suddenly. In a high frequency environment, climate change, antibody buildup develops disease, cancer, sexual reproduction, aging, and dies suddenly, but faster and even SADS sooner. Sudden infant death, sudden adult death. So as you are conditioned to do what you're doing right now, before climate change, it was like a slower rate of death, relatively slower rate. Not really, but relatively slower. But now in a high frequency environment, now you're seeing the turbo cancers and the SADS happen sooner. And so copulation equals population. And so fertility is deadly to the person. Imagine how deadly global fertility rates are to humankind. That's why the system is controlling it. Since humans were and are the immortal gods, the system had to build it in the death, culture, family, love, addiction to regulate its population. Yep, I knew that. And so if the system can't invade you externally, right, your friends and family will invade you internally. Whose defense systems are the strongest? That's called the Hunger Games. And so in my world, going out with my husband to eat or shopping is like an immunological workout. It's fun because it's rare, and I sleep really good at night. Oh, I do. And knowing what I know does not make me popular. Popularity equals fertility equals death. I don't want to be popular. I really don't need to be liked or accepted because I want to live. That's the new world. I'm not trying to save anyone. Okay. All right, I read that already. Okay. And then, hold on. Antibiotics via herbs, extracts, pharma, supplements, detoxes develops the anti-host, the enemy inside, that was trained to suppress your immune system. You trained your immune system against you. The demons are working against people right now. Mycoplasma is the resistance. A little resistance is okay, but when the resistance called fertility works, grows so fast, deadly, died suddenly. And so when babies are not surviving the midwives, we will finally understand how much fertility weakens families. Babies need mediators, they need all food, and they need adequate release process. When families don't even survive the midwives, will we finally wake up? When babies and children do not survive midwives, the hospital system, and their environment, will you finally believe that constant reproduction develops very weak offspring? I mean very weak and extreme offspring? Who will you blame next? The professionals tried to tell us, but was met with such resistance. So the system will show you in your own home, Facebook and TikTok. I was programmed to die via sexuality, domestic violence, or cancer lymphoma. I counted the bullets I dodged the last 7 years based upon my society, my upbringing, even my belief system I held at the time of diseases. We all were and are programmed to pass away from our politics, religion, and science and daily habits. Remember, it was your parents who pounded the gavel of belief into you, your grandparents, your religions, your leaders at the time. Someone like me offered a different perspective and you hanged them or nailed them to the cross or genocided them or bullied them. You did it. But what if we did not have to die from our beliefs? That would require a change. A change in your beliefs. Yeah, Jillian, good luck with that. People think if they changed, they lost. No, you won, and the system lost. The system did not ever expect you to change. They bank on you not changing. Even people are voluntarily dying for their beliefs. The system wants volunteers who feel no pain under the influence, with all their baubles and babies and animals and friends and family and trips. 1945 will never happen again. You are the volunteers. Thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice. Remember, I am not the enemy. Just giving you their playbook. I lived it. I suffered. I even, given my background, I was supposed to die from domestic violence, sexuality, and lymphoma, or ovarian cervical cancer. I felt that lipoma a few years ago. I had a fatty tumor, and it is gone. I was able to move it around when I did feel it. But imagine today in this environment, I would have had some kind of reproductive cancer or sarcoma. I know what bullets I dodged. I saved myself. And so some lumps that look like lipomas can be cancerous, such as liposarcomas. These lumps tend to be painful, fast-growing, and fixed under the skin. In this case, your doctor will refer you to a specialist for diagnosis and treatment. Some lumps look like lipomas can be cysts. Let's say, for example, the lipoma did become fast-moving. If I had to get it surgically taken out, imagine trying to come back from that aggressive, invasive type operation. Painful, very painful, which is why I survived and my dog did not. That she had surgeries and was suffering, trying to come back and live. While on one hand, that sucks. On the other hand, this is why my info is important to consider. Weigh out the pros and cons before you make surgical choices. I am not saying it's impossible to come back from surgeries if you're going to be in my world, but it will be very painful. And so a lipoma origination. Research shows a link between adipose tumor growth as a post-traumatic event following a direct impact on that area of soft tissue. In addition to risk factors listed above, other possible connections that may lead to lipomas are obesity, alcohol abuse, liver disease, as well as glucose intolerance. So if you think about trauma-based programming and how they program girls to be so hot, you can only imagine the areas in which they've developed trauma around them to develop the behaviors and even the phenotypical characteristics. And it's not illegal if there are specific things that are followed and there is nothing penetrating the person. That's how the system developed hot women some women without that situation of being violated. And other women have been violated through their family members because of incest and rape and even from their peers. And so the train left the station there. And so you'll see all types of women out there who were developed to be very sexual through so many different means. And you'll never know how they became sexual. But there are ways to do that. And that's it's fucking genius. Fucking genius. So nothing was illegal in my world. Nothing was. And I can't even claim that may mean, because who the fuck knows? Who the hell knows? But I remember how I felt as a child. I remember I remember everything. But again, there was nothing illegal done. So I can't claim that. And I'm made to be very fucking smart and driven to understand shit. And so no matter how my life was that was supposed to happen, and here it is. Here is the fruits of all of that labor. And I don't have to die someday. And I'm in fucking paradise. So my world is not built on religion or faith or spirituality. My world is built on science and balancing life in my body. Belief is not just enough in the J world. You must have the biophysical capabilities to handle the energy conversion of eating all food, releasing properly, and also incorporate societal lifestyle changes. Belief alone is just not enough. Sitting in belief, faith in my world will not serve you, especially around physical and definite life. You must physically have the body and the access to food, rest, and release to even scratch the surface of my world. And so, Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm almost left. 2 more things. So the notion that buying 5 more years of life is what to live for in the unstable environment may not serve you very well. Who's to say any remedy, surgery, herbal detox, or oncology, or public health therapy can guarantee that even before climate change? Buying years to live was always a fantasy. That was how the system got you. But the system gave you only one side of the equation. But my information, the other side of the equation, has been met with such resistance, it won't matter what you do. People think they can buy their life, buy people, places, and things, animals. You cannot put a price on life, only death. And people do put a price on death. And so, supplements, remedies, and elderberry syrup develops the anti-host in kids and adults. Hold on. I'll put you out here for a minute. Hey, I'm on this. I gotta put the phone outside, so are you okay? Jay? Jay? All right, let me finish this up. Okay. And so supplements, remedies, and elderberry syrup develops the anti-host in kids and adults. And also sexuality, fertility, and sexual orientation. I'm watching these mothers make the demons anti-host stronger in their kids. Craziness. You cannot stop it, just observe it. Some of it is FDA approved and regulated by the government. Other people are selling their antibiotic concoctions from their kitchen, selling them or giving them away, or selling you a combination of supplements to take against whatever. They are just accelerating the death process in their audience and then blaming somebody else. But it's what makes money. So don't get in the way of that. You're fucking with government money. The government expects the taxes from all those sales from people who are already desperate, who already expect to pass away anyways. I heard it from you. You said your life was short. Be careful what you wish for. And then they have extreme health issues. You want to end up like them? Go for it. But now the system doesn't care. Go for it. You accepted death as a result. People are already expected to die someday. They just didn't realize it might happen faster in a different environment. But they were already conditioned. I could never change anyone. This is why parents must save themselves, if you even have the capacity or the allowance. Children are not allowed to be sick, cough, and sneeze. They're forced to take medications and remedies. And of course, these kids are starving. So even if they're allowed to be sick, do they have the good substance to handle the energy? Most likely not. So it's a catch-22 with kids. Parents, save yourselves. This is what happens when people advocate everyone breeding so much life. It becomes out of control and deadly to society, even the hosts themselves. We are living in hell as the hell we developed. And it will be extremely hard lesson to learn. Developing so many offspring will continue to mass amounts of death when the climate changes. It's happening. It's been happening. All right. So long story short, fertility is deadly. And Adam and Eve is a lesson, even if we don't have religion anymore. We have agnostics or atheists. Adam and Eve was a story about humans developing their own suffering through mass amounts of fertility and temptation and addictions. But that was how they nation built and developed evolution. But now you're not responsible to populate the planet. Now it's time to save yourself and let the government populate the planet the way it's supposed to be. But we have to go through Africa and Asia and all the Middle East and everything. And so right now, if no one's coming into your house and knocking on your door and telling you to do this and that and whatever, and there's no war in your actual neighborhood, you have the capacity to save yourself. And if you choose not to, then it's no one's fault but your own. If you choose not to save yourself, and you choose to be out there causing so much fertility, causing the turbo cancers, and all the diseases, and you're being given a different thought process or different information, then you have no one to blame but yourself. I don't want to fucking hear it. All right, bye.